discussion on the mission of alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life for people around the world. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our panelists. We have with us Mr. Manoj Saxena, Managing Director, Bearzidus Pharma. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Mr. J.P. Trivedi, CIO, Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Soumya Brata Das, Head IT TCG Life Sciences. May I also present to you Mr. Khalid Ghaula Adeen, Head Digital Healthcare Vertical at Etisalat. A warm welcome to Ms. Bhavna Yerum Reddy, Healthcare and Retail Vertical Leader, Microsoft India. And of course, moderating the session and joining us yet again is Mr. Sandep Parikh, Partner, Business Consulting and Leader, Intelligence Automation, EY. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. And may I now hand over to Mr. Sandep Parikh to take the proceedings.
Thank you, Isha. Once again, a very good afternoon to our audience. Panel, thank you very much for taking time out this afternoon to share your perspective on a topic that's probably very appropriate, unfortunately. Manoj, sorry for the pharma industry, but it is very, very relevant. Extending life for people around the world is a motto that a lot of pharma companies have picked up. And of course, the healthcare industry has kind of really worked very, very hard and toiled towards that. It is a utopian world, of course, but nonetheless, we are trying our level best to get there. In the session, of course, we'd like to really talk about not just a patient's journey, in a healthcare institution and how that gets impacted by digital, but overall, how do you kind of make the experience for a patient and more importantly for human beings far more, nicer when it comes to the healthcare. With that, let me kind of get started by asking a very, very simple yet straightforward question. And Manoj, I'd probably request your help here. There's a lot of buzz around digital in the healthcare space. Would you be kind enough to kind of explain what that means for our audience? And of course, what can the consumers really expect when we talk about digital in healthcare?
No, thanks, Sandeep. The buzz in healthcare, the digital buzz in healthcare has been there for some time, and I will go back to the EY, Digital Maturity Index of Customer Engagement, which said that pharmaceutical industry per se is very traditional. The added buzz has come in because of the COVID factor, and there was a WhatsApp jokes going around. What is triggering this digitization? Is it COVID? Is it CEO or CIO? But I think the buzz is around from a perspective of that a lot of patients today have access to the world of telehealth. Yeah, and fortunately, the regulations also came in time for India. As we kicked off the COVID, there were regulations coming in for telehealth. So one buzz is whole spectrum of, from a patient perspective, sitting at their home, can he really get the benefit of access to the quality healthcare services, from telemedicine to telehealth to e-pharmacies and the whole thing around that. From a pharmaceutical industry, it's a great opportunity to get access and have quality treatment available for patients. Whatever we do, we always look at doing it from keeping the patient at the center for it. And I think digitalization does offer tremendous amount of opportunity to reach out to the right patient. As I always say, our ability to really empower patients so that he manages diseases well. The second is the non-traditional channels. Traditionally, our whole activity was essentially face-to-face. It was very tough to move to a non-traditional way. And I think a lot of organizations, including ours, are looking at that non-traditional channels does open, a lot of communication approaches towards our customer. And this is essentially pharmacies and doctors. And in a manner to communicate clearly, more impactfully, bringing in more efficiency. And I think that is the second buzz. The third is the industry always is about data and science. We spent almost 17-18% of our top line revenues putting into our R&D so that we have a new asset coming in, and it's a long drawn process. Some of the lay press is talking about it because of the vaccines, but we know innovative treatment takes 7-8 years to come in, and our whole communication angle is focused on data and science. Now, what digitalization does is it brings that data and science together through AI, through machine learning, through data analytics, into our R&D operations, into our business modeling, into our marketing practices, so that we have a better insight in terms of what customer wants to understand, what patients wants to know, and it's more targeted, more personalized, and much more transparent and trustworthy. And I think, so that's the real buzz, Sandeep, around these three topics, which is getting all of us excited.
No, I think that's very, very well said, and I guess data and science, particularly in business operations, R&D, and treating patients is what is really making the difference. Bhavna, would you care to kind of share your perspective, given that you work back with Microsoft, and what is it that big global tech companies are talking about? I mean, what is the buzz from their perspective?
Thanks, Sandeep. Sorry, I resonate a bit with Manoj very well. I think digital transformation has always been there with the healthcare. It's just that it has to take COVID to accelerate that on a high speed mode. It's I think the transformation speed at which the healthcare has gone in the last few months. I think it has taken all the 5 years initiatives in a fast-paced mode and kind of moded. And similar thoughts like Manoj, the digital technology companies, or actually the technology companies, are looking at enabling the healthcare industry itself, keeping the patient in the center, and also keeping the frontline health workers or health teams or care teams to give the safety measure in the given circumstances. And I think whatever the transformation that has happened in the last few months is going to be the future of the patient, healthcare taker, and the patient relationship would be a similar approach, right? If you keep the patient in the center, right, it's all about enhancing the patient experience and engagement, empowering your healthcare team, and improving your operational efficiencies and the optimization of supply chain from a healthcare segment. And also, above all these, I think it's also important to keep the healthcare data secure and compliant. I think these are the 5-6 objectives on which the tech companies are evolving, like Microsoft has been investing heavily along with the healthcare providers globally and within India to drive the transformation and align for the objectives and the outcomes that the healthcare is looking towards.
Great. Manoj, I think you brought up some really, really strong points, and that is very relevant for the human race and the world as a whole. But when we look at our country, while we've got the National E-Health Authority, or NEHA as they call it, and of course the Prime Minister's healthcare plan is also kind of in place. Then we've also got the Digital Info Security in Healthcare 2018, which is called DISHA 2018. Now, with all of these initiatives, India is still kind of a little behind on the digitization in the healthcare space. Obviously, one reason being our population. But is there something we can do to really accelerate the transition? Or you believe this is, we are on the right track?
No, I think digitalization does need an ecosystem, Sandeep, and all these initiatives, what you have said, are I think in the right direction. But we also have to bear in mind that let's look at number of hospitals, right? The hospital infrastructure, 60% of them is only in urban setting, where 32% of the population resides. per 1,000 people, there is only 2 doctors. And if you look at rural segments or semi-urban, is actually less than 1. Yeah. All these factors now, does digitalization or telehealth, telemedicine helps to address that? Tremendously. Just imagine a follow-up visit for a patient coming all the way to All India Institute of Medical Sciences or to Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute where Mr. Dwivedi is there. It takes a while, and I think if the digital solutions are there, it gives the patient an access to not to go unnecessarily, but follow up digitally. So I think providing an ecosystem where there are advantages clearly outlining it. And some people say that digitalization is only for rich, but we have seen enough across the board. Jan Dhan is a good example. UPIs are a good example, right? Technology has always helped everyone, and it's been a biggest bridge. So I think we are in the right direction, but probably in spending a little bit more money. We know India spends absolutely minimum amount of money on the GDP for healthcare. So that is something which we need to look at it to build in instruments like EMR, data privacy, things like telemedicine, availability and access to everyone, greater awareness, but also creating the ecosystem for doctors, pharmacies, so that they understand the new tools and use them appropriately.
Sure. Bhavna, anything from your perspective?
No, I think it's just not alone one entity that drives this transformation, reaching out to the larger population, Sandeep. I think it, as Manoj rightly said, it should be an ecosystem, the government, the health providers and the tech companies to kind of enable that so that the reach is much larger. If you see the EHR adoption in the Indian context itself, right, India stands less than 25% of the EHR adoption, right? So there's a whole lot that they could be achieved. I think we are in the right direction with all the entities coming together, which I think Prime Minister Modi has initiated it. With the right approach and the right acceleration, India should be getting the right healthcare reach to the rest of the, not just only to the urban, but also the rural parts of India.
Sure. JP, you actually represent one of the premier institutes our country has for cancer treatment. What do you think, what value does digital actually help drive in your perspective, and especially for an institution like yours? And also, is it important? Do you believe that if digital can really truly transform a lot of things for your consumers, do you think it's also very important to have it in place?
Absolutely. So in value terms, I will take our patient's perspective. The patient is looking for 4 things. Number 1, safety. As I walked in, please let me walk out. Number 2, clinical outcome. Apply any technology, any process, any methodology, any treatment to alleviate my pain, as the topic says, and help me get rid of the disease, which is cancer in our case. Third is cost. Make it affordable for me to undergo this rigorous process of treatment. And fourth is experience. Our patients don't expect to be treated like a king, but at least they expect to be treated with dignity and respect and minimum discomfort as much as possible. Digital technology has footprint in all these 4 areas. Look at chemotherapy. We apply a clinical decision support system which says that this particular protocol, given this body surface area, can be administered with this much dose in this much solution over this long period. And somehow by mistake, if doctor is prescribing 60 ml or 60 milligram in place of 6 milligram, digital system will check and raise an alert that doctor, this is 5%, over 5% of the tolerance limit as per the standard protocol that probably World Health Organization or any other organization is allowing for this particular body surface area. And doctor will be alerted. Do you still want to give this much? If you want to give this much, please document the reason for it. Similarly, in place of 60 mg, if doctor writes by mistake 6 mg, and it could be a typing error also, or handwriting error, or whatever, the system will say this much dose is insufficient for the patient of this particular body surface area. Is there any particular reason you want to prescribe this much? So this I was talking about the clinical outcome area. I mean, look at picture archival and communication system. This has been there for more than a decade.
Right.
Digital X-ray, digital CT, digital MRI, where all the filmless scanning is happening. And in one moment, the scanning has happened. The next moment, the image is available at the doctor's desk for viewing. And even it is available for some outside institutes or organizations also. So these technologies have been there. Now we are seeing a time where actually the information technology and medical technology are submerging. Now we are talking about digital pathology, digital radiology, very actively talking to electronic health record, and information technology is having more and more active role there. I'm 100% agreeing with what Manoj or Bhavna said, that this particular 7-8 months time has really convinced the board and CEOs and everyone about the fact that CIOs were trying for a long time. So it has. That is the flip side. I mean, we have really moved on acceleration. We talk about cloud, we talk about social media, about mobility. You look at telemedicine app, it has combined all of them. And it is actually a very nice bouquet of all digital technologies, all put together. And patient is happily talking to the doctor sitting from the comfort of the home. So there's no denying to the fact that digital technologies actually add to every facet of the patient's value proposition, may it be outcome, cost, reach, experience, safety, everything.
I think, JP, that's very, very well said. And I mean, if I were to just summarize, I think the patient has a tremendously good experience. Of course, nobody likes to be ill, but point is, when an individual is ill, he or she, as you rightly said, wants to walk in and walk out, completely healthy. And I think that whole experience that an individual gets can be dramatically changed by leveraging digital technology. So that's kind of very, very well put. Soumya, you represent a contract research and manufacturing organization, right? I mean, from your perspective, how has digital really kind of transformed, or is it transforming your clients, or the ability for you to provide better services to clients?
Hey, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks, Sandeep. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the industry per se, this is slightly upstream CRO industry. And if you look at that, the most of the work delivered by the CROs are physical work, When it's a question of synthesis, whether it's ending up with biology, or you're looking at a different chemical structure, create the new derivatives. I mean, if you take a very typical example of this COVID situation, which is kind of a new normal. And again, I would borrow the same word called necessity of mother of all inventions. Here, what has been happening is we are trying to create some accelerated world, which is where we are trying to fuse 7 years of experience in research into a 7 months kind of a scenario. Yet then we are all expecting the treatment to be absolutely fair and fine. Having said that, getting into the space of the CRO, predominantly considering the nature of the work, it's physical, definitely, yes. However, what's being done in this particular turnaround time, we have started creating the remote sessions, as many as possible as for the managers, the group leaders, and what we have done is a very strong verification protocol of the results. Because one simple derivative, one methyl molecule or one ethyl molecule can really create a wonder in terms of the medical treatment for any particular disease, given a opportunity. Therefore, what has happened is the physical work continued. It has been just spread into what you call as shifts because of the certain regulatory requirements. But in terms of the verification, that system has been enhanced hugely, because any wrong result could potentially damage the entire community. So that system has been digitized in a lot more stable system. Right. So that's the CRO per se.
No, I think that's great. We spoke about how technology and digital, all encompassing is really going to impact the consumers and the patients and humans in general. However, at the end of the day, we all realize that these are all institutions and enterprises that are kind of, delivering these services and bringing about the change. A question that continuously gets asked, and for reasons good, bad, ugly, I don't really know how to qualify that, but is digital transformation an IT agenda, or should it be an agenda that should actually be owned, led, sponsored by the chief executive, chief operating officer, and the board? What I do is first get a CIO's perspective on this. JP, if you want to kind of take a stab, and then we'll go to Manoj.
Yeah, sure. So I think, Sandeep, better question is it a CIO agenda or CEO board agenda? So CIO actually, walks a very tight rope.
Right.
He always, he or she wears always two hats. One is on the supply side and other is on the demand side. So demand side represents more of business transformation, business process re-engineering, all improvements or changing the face of the organization. But on the other side, he needs to have the organization below him or her to actually cater to the expectations that he or she is creating along with the business. So yes, any transformation needs blessings from the top. Without chairman, board or CEO, nothing really moves because money is there. And everything at the end of the day needs money. Plus, alignment of these transformation objectives with the business objectives. It is very important. So the CIO's role is really to create that trust in the mind and heart of the board and chairman that CIO is a trusted partner and at least secures an equal seat in the top high table. There they together discuss, collaboratively drive the transformation. I think there's no other way.
Right. that is the true CIO speak. But I think JP brought out a few good points, and Manoj, I'd probably bring you in here. JP spoke about, one, of course, getting a seat at the table, but the key is building trust, right? And the second most important thing is he spoke about the fact that this has to be aligned to business imperatives. Of course, blessings is something I may not necessarily agree, but again, I'd probably, let you throw light on it. Is it just blessings, or does it need to be truly owned and run by the leadership?
No, I partly agree with what Mr. Dwivedi said, and I think blessing is not the right word. Maybe he also understands that it's being polite of him. I think the key thing is, from my perspective, digitalization is around strategy, right? So if your strategy of whatever you're doing, whatever is your core of doing, let's say our core competence is around innovating newer drugs, newer therapies, and communicating it well, so that patients feel empowered. That's our, we say health for all, hunger for none. So in that sense, I think strategic and how digitization fits into that strategy, which is well communicated, well understood by all stakeholders, is absolutely critical. And there, I think CEOs play a pivotal role. And I think that's the pivotal role in a form of blessing is what Mr. Dwivedi is. But there is a flip side to it also. I think culturally, a lot of organization has to change as well. And when I say culturally, because we know the famous saying of culture, it's a strategy over a breakfast, right? So you can have the best of the strategy, and that is the case for a lot of organizations where we feel, okay, we have a nice strategy for digitalization, but not inherent value proposition culturally doesn't fit in, and then people have cold fitted when it comes to execution. I think that piece is very relevant. And from a culture perspective, three things which we emphasize within the organization is: do we have mindset of people for digitalization? Do we have capabilities of people? So people, do we have processes which can support digitalization? And do we have platforms which then can support digitalization? So I think, so apart from strategy, culture is something which is again very, very important to drive digitalization.
No, I think that's very, very well said.
Sandeep, I'll give you a practical perspective.
Sure.
Generally, see, CIO role in healthcare is still evolving. CIO is still in most of the organizations not equal to CFO or COO. So people, in order to let people drive the transformation, sometimes the power of the CEO is exercised by CIO with CEO's consent, and that is called blessing.
Sure. No, I think I fully agree with you, JP, because I've been in those shoes for many years. But I think with Manoj on the call, as a CEO, I think I wanted to kind of get his perspective as to, does he agree with you? And he actually said so, that JP was being very polite. I think that said a lot of things without having to explain. Khalid, at this stage, I'll probably also try to bring you in and get your perspective. I mean, you represent the Etisalat, which is a very, very different organization. It's an organization I've also seen pretty close up. But I think more importantly, you also represent a very different region. Do you kind of see this as well in your region? I mean, do you believe that it should be the board agenda?
Thank you very much, Sandeep. Good afternoon, everybody. So, definitely, I think healthcare as a business. You probably know that keeping with the digital transformation in healthcare can feel overwhelming, right? So, deciding which emerging technologies can worth actually investing and in getting your team on board and with the changes is often the hardest part. And I completely agree with the colleagues and their perspective. So look, adapting to the digital era requires shifts toward a flexible and risk-taking mindset, right? So it means that letting go of outdated business processes and trusting that disruption would yield big results, right? So before we dive, on this topic and just to go back to your question, is that let's just stop for a moment for the definition itself, right? So the digital transformation in healthcare is the positive impact of the technology in healthcare. That's what we are looking for, right? So. And I agree, we are looking on health outcome, we are looking on cost perspective for the patient, we are looking on the perspective, but what we really want to achieve is that how digital transformation will actually provide a positive impact, in the healthcare, how this technology will impact. So here is why. So we have telemedicine, artificial intelligence, enabled medical devices, blockchain, electronic health record are just few concrete examples, right? That's how the digital is impacting in the healthcare industry, and which are completely reshaping how we interact with healthcare professionals, how our data is shared among providers, and how decisions are made about, our treatment plan and health outcomes. So innovation is the name of the game here, with the main goal of streamlining, physicians' work, right? Optimizing systems, improving, patient outcomes and all of that. In terms of the region here, for example, in UAE, so I represent Etisalat, which is, it's a operator in 16 countries as a telecom operator. but I have done only healthcare in my background in the last 18 years. And my role, it was what is the role of the telco in the digital healthcare? How they can help in the transformation of the healthcare? And there is a lot of gaps. So if we look at, unfortunately, the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries have lagged behind when it comes to implementing digital strategies. Not like finance, banking, gas and oil and on and so on and so on. So you are right. I mean, there is still a way to go, and the agenda of usually the CEO is not the same as the CIO in an organization, in either it is a healthcare provider or pharmaceutical. Right. So we still have a long run as well. So yes, there is a lot of progress, especially with the COVID-19. There is an acceleration, but I think that's regardless in India or GCC, still there is a way to go.
Right. No, I think that's kind of points which are very, very valid, Khalid. If I were to just summarize this, and I hope there are board members and CEOs in the audience today, or whoever will see this video recording whenever, I think clearly digital transformation will help. And by the way, I'm not saying this because I run technology as well. No. That's not what it is about. But I think digital transformation will help organizations really stay relevant. Very, very clearly, it'll change the patient experience, really change the way you engage with the patients, and thereby obviously impact revenue, profitability, earnings per share clearly. So I think it is absolutely something that the board needs to, and the CEO needs to really care about. The CIO obviously is the most important enabler there, along with the business leaders in partnership. Khalid, you represent a very, very interesting organization, and you represent Etisalat, which is a telecom player, but you're a healthcare provider. That's a very interesting combination, right? I would like to basically ask you a question. First of all, healthcare and telecom, what's the relationship? And secondly, clearly I'm guessing that digital is that, that bridge. So what is it that you have in mind? I mean, what kind of experiences or products you are expecting to create, or you've already created?
Thank you. So, yes, it sounds a little bit strange, right? Operator or telecom operator with the healthcare. Usually, the boundaries of the telco, it stands to the connectivity or infrastructure, right? This is what we, at least all of us as experts in the healthcare industry, we know about, right? So that the boundaries of the telco is usually connectivity or infrastructure related to that. But telco has actually much more to give, if any CIO in any organization, if you want to launch any initiative, either telehealth or chronic disease management or remote monitoring or, any EHR, so he need to do a budget, right? And he need to, he may select the solution provider or the technology provider that will help him to enable, the business, but he will always have that, that budget to secure for the infrastructure, right? So this is one. So here the telco enter with that assets. So what we are doing so far since last 4 years is that how we can use all the assets of the telco operator, which is very, very important. Cloud computing, security, IoT platforms, right? So all of these connectivity, MPLS, all of that. So this is the first stack. Then you combine that with solution from other partners and you deliver a service end to end in order to remove the hassle from the customer side. So that customer, he doesn't have to manage different parties. He doesn't have to manage someone for infrastructure, someone for the solution, someone for the service, the support and all of that. So the telco can, because of the financial strength, usually it's a semi-government entity, so it has a trust, right? They gave a trust, so it's an image of trust in front of the government. And the most important is that they have leverage in order to reach everywhere. So if you want to launch telehealth in, for example, in a country such as India or Saudi Arabia, where it's very large, you need someone that can reach everywhere. We don't want telehealth only in cities. We want telehealth for the people that are actually outside of the cities, that are in the remote area, that they don't have, because at the end, all of us, we have one ultimate objective, is that to provide healthcare, and to make it accessible to everybody. So that's the role of the, that we are playing. So we are launching solutions like in telemedicine in the cloud. We are launching like the EMR in the cloud. So instead of having to install it for every hospital, why not to have it in a cloud within the same country? So from data residency and all of that, we take care of that. And we partner for that, with Microsoft, so using, Azure services, and we put on that, on the top of it, EMR in the cloud. In order to what? To accelerate the adoption of the EMR. Before, Bhavana, she explained that the adoption of the EHR, for example, in India is 25%. That is still a problem, right? How you can accelerate that? This is what we have to think about it, right? Because now people are moving to solution on the top of the EMR in order to reuse the data.
So Khalid, and just a quick clarificatory question for a very large country like India, where of course we've got mobile telephony pretty much there, but sometimes you could have areas which are pretty much blackout zones, right? So how does the telecom provider become the bridge between the service provider, which is the healthcare institution, and of course the patient or the individual receiving the service? So how does that happen?
So the telco actually has the strength of all, ingredients to make it accessible. This is the first. Second is that they don't have to invest in the infrastructure anymore. They have to reuse the infrastructure and to make it accessible. So why you let, for example, any healthcare provider to invest a lot of money in order to use the infrastructure to enable any kind of use case? This is one. So you have to come with a disruptive business model to help the CIOs to launch their initiatives. This is the role, right? So in addition to the accessibility, so telecom are accessible. Everybody has mobile in India and everywhere, anywhere, right? So everybody has mobile. So this is another point. They can increase the adoption. They can facilitate increasing the adoption and to accelerate that. That's the point.
Okay. Digital is an all-encompassing word, right? It includes artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, blockchain, etc. Typically, as far as healthcare is concerned, Bhavna, what do you think is the maturity of these technologies or solutions, for the industry? And also talk about how does this help with or what's the maturity with respect to India?
As we started off, the EHR adoption itself is at a very less in India right now, Sandeep.
Right.
And I think the advanced markets like US, UK, and Europe are far ahead when it comes to the technology adoption, especially in the healthcare sector. And I think there has been some of these use cases where that they have been using, especially from a data and AI standpoint, or actually for that matter, virtual reality based adoptions. India still stands a laggard there, and I think there is a lot to catch up, primarily because, as we said, the reach of the healthcare to the rural environment itself is less, and also the population who understands the technology element part of it. It's not just only the care provider part of it, right? But the adoption and understanding of the technology from the rural element as well. But I think, in my experience of late with Microsoft, the health providers' ambition to take these advanced technology-based offerings to the larger population in India and in collaboration with the government entities, there have been a lot of investments that are being done by the healthcare providers. I can talk on behalf of the organization I represent. Heavy investments going on building healthcare cloud for healthcare, which encompasses all the combinations of what we are talking about: cloud, secured cloud, on-prem or private public clouds, or actually hybrid ones. And also the data and AI elements, where we are talking about precision-based decision making, right? So these and the AI and virtual reality-based solutions. There are advanced discussions with the healthcare providers in the India market to take it, but the maturity is still low in Indian context. And not just only in the healthcare, but overall. But as we progress, we should be able to see that kind of a bit uptake in the coming years.
Okay. No, I think that's great. JP, one quick 30 seconds perspective, typical big boss style, if I may ask. Would you agree with what Bhavna's saying?
So yeah, I partly agree. See, there are clearly two aspects in healthcare. One is the medical technology, as I was telling you, the other is information technology. And why EMR adoption is not happening? If you look at it, the technology is not enabling. Doctor is on the round. If you give voice recognition very accurately, pitching in, and doctor is speaking, giving instructions, and instructions fitting in well in EMR, will immediately help adoption of EMR. And these are some of these technologies which are still in nascent stage, a different level of implementation. Very soon, I hope these will come, and we will see a perfect bridge between medical and information technology, all moving together for a greater good of the patient.
I agree with Dr. Dwivedi on the speech to text conversations that we are embarking on. A lot of healthcare providers are now evaluating that, so that there is no need for translating after the care is given, then you prescribe, and the prescription is then scanned and stored. It's like while the caregiver is having a conversation with the patient, the data is being captured in the form of a record, right? That actually, the availability of that record, the time taken to time spent with the customer or with the patient is much lesser than the normal way, right? And the data accuracy is much higher.
Sure. So, Bhavna, how much money is the global tech investing in this space? I mean, and are you seeing a lot of startups as well come up?
Absolutely. I think in the Indian context itself, Sandeep, if you look at the startups, there has been an exponential rise in the PEs investing in the health tech startups within India market.
Do you have a number in?
I am unfortunately I don't recollect exact number, but I read it that the investments by the PEs in Indian context, especially on the health tech companies, have been extremely high of late. Number two, I think it's not just only the PEs investing in it. Technology companies like Microsoft or the Googles or the Amazons of the world are also investing in a startup ecosystems. I mean, I can give an example. Recently, Microsoft has launched a specific program to kind of incubate those startups which are healthcare specific or industry specific, so that the technology breadth and width of the Microsoft and the startup ecosystem can give a much more larger scale and penetration into the healthcare sector. Okay.
So Soumya, are you also seeing something similar in your space?
Well, yes. I mean, I would first probably put in the technology actually reduces the cost of operation. I mean, there is a very misconception saying that, again, like a chicken and egg story, which comes first. Well, that said, probably what we need to do is, I'll probably go one step back a bit. When we talk about investments, I was hearing Dr. Saab saying that we are in good healthcare.
I'm not a doctor.
He just represents.
I withdraw that. You are a doctorate, okay. Moving back to that, probably what we need to have is a vision first. This is what I want to achieve, and it's a typically short term, mid term, long term. And then we need to probably measure the most important part of the whole strategy making, it's the audience, the size of the audience. If we do that, leaving aside the regulatory part and the security part of it, the entire technology adoption would be sitting on top of the entire organization, which is where probably we first need to do a bit of maturity profiling. I'm sure Sandeep, you would be loving these words because that's the buzzword when we get into any sort of transformation. Now, coming back to this particular space, I see a lot of changes coming in, and I would say the big data, the adoption of typically the huge amount of research data which is lying into the industry, whether you talk about the healthcare, you talk about the CRO per se, there's some sort of research is going anywhere, everywhere. That is going to help magnanimously. I am from IBM. I have a pretty long footprint in IBM. But unfortunately, adopting that solution, the cost of the solution per reaction is turning out to be so high, typically where the maturity of this particular solution probably needs to travel a bit more.
Right. Okay.
And once that is there into a sort of rational kind of a scenario, then people would be adopting it pretty fast.
Sure.
There are different analytics part which is also going on.
Cool.
Over to you, Sandeep.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that's great. I guess we are running out of time. So 30 seconds, for you guys to really quickly give me 30 seconds collectively to tell me whether digital transformation in healthcare is going to impact the economies of, the global economy and of course our economy, which is a part of the globe. So Manoj, we'll start with you. Yes, no. And if you have a number, how much?
Absolutely, yes. India, I think telehealth is slotted to be roughly around 5 billion in the next 5 years. So massive amount of money would flow in through the telemedicine and digitalization. Yeah. Excellent.
Bhavna?
Absolutely, I agree with Manoj. I'm not sure on the numbers front though, but I can see a traction that's happening in between the tech companies and the government. So I'm a firm believer that it's going to be impacting heavily on the economy.
Excellent. Khalid, just a yes, no, or a number if you have it.
Absolutely, 100%. I think just with the fact that more than 4 billion people globally are on the internet, and you can start to see the possibility of digital transformation in healthcare offer.
Cool. Soumya?
Unthinkable possibilities.
Excellent. JP?
Yes, absolutely. It will create a lot of avenues for tech companies also.
Right. So I think on that light note, what I would like to summarize is the fact that digital transformation, particularly in healthcare, is already upon us. So anyone who is a detractor, I think I'm sorry for them, but the reality is that it's already upon us. It is already going to ease, and it is already started easing the pain of patients and the consumers, and clearly, not just in a small way, but in a very, very big way, it is impacting the lives of humans. Clearly, it is extending lives. And, just a very simple example before I close, there are enough and more researches that have happened. There are lots of startups and companies that are in spaces which are actually helping blind people see 10K. You've seen an ultra high definition television, which is 4K, but technology is allowing people to see 10K by implanting chips on the brain. So with that note, I will just summarize to say that, yes, it is completely impacting. Thank you very much.